Welcome back, guys, to Mind What Matters, where we talk about all things caregiving. And Nikki.
Where we mind everything that matters. You guys, it's been a
Okay.
long day. We've been hit by things. We've been hit by massive storms. We've been hit by the flu in my house, which Bennett had never gotten because we had to be
Benny
so protective.
got it?
Yeah,
I thought Hudson had it.
He had it too, but his wasn't so bad. But Bennett, also, thank God. I mean, listen, everybody has to make the right decisions for themselves. But in our family, we get flu shots. First and foremost, we have to, Bennett's a heart kid. It's really important. He has to get his vaccines. He has to get his shots. It's all protective of his heart, and we all have to get them. And he had never gotten the flu because we have been so careful during cold and flu seasons. And that was something that when he was little and his heart wasn't, for those years where his heart wasn't fully, whole, that they were like, this could be really, 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 really hard on his body.
Yeah.
And between the flu shot and Tamiflu, getting that into his body, the second those symptoms came online, I got to say, I mean, he was still very sick, but that kid did it. But yeah.
Did he have did he have the trippy wild dreams from the Tamiflu?
He has trippy wild dreams, period. He's like me. He dreams,
same.
He travels in his dreams. So anyway, long days, long week, but we're here. Hi, everyone.
I'm feeling uber guilty that I spent last week in Cabo where you were supposed to be with me.
Good for you.
Thank the Lord you didn't end up coming. What if he had gotten sick without you? That would have been the worst.
Listen, full-blown panic attack, but not something I haven't had a million times before, I'll tell you that much. But
it's definitely been a wild and woolly start to 2026, guys. What can I say? We've had crazy things happening in the start of this year. It's been an interesting time. Yeah.
I want a refund on 2026. But it's
giving 2020 vibes. I don't like it a lot at all.
What is mattering? I think
what's mattering
today? What is mattering to us today? What is mattering is that in the craziest of crazy times, right? I think it's so easy to disassociate, to not pay attention, to look away, to not care, to grow apathetic. And what I think really matters so much is that we don't do any of those things. Take time for yourself. If you need a mental health break, if you need 24 hours, a long weekend, I like to do on the weekends, I like to do Sundays. I just put my phone down. I put my phone away. I'll check it a few times a day, but I'm just put it away. I'm not on my phone on Sundays. It's like a day mental health. But other than that, right, I feel like there's so much suffering and there's so much going on. And also, we can do the hard things. We can stay engaged. We cannot lose ourselves inside of it. And the way that I usually try to do that is literally staying in my body, taking care of myself, making sure I move my body so that I stay in my body, getting good sleep, and also not abandoning or betraying myself, and just kind of focusing when things feel overwhelming on what is the next right thing that I need to do right now. What is within my control that I can do right this second that I need to do. So I don't know if anybody's feeling that way. I think a lot of people are. I know all of my friends are. And I just keep saying, don't look far, look forward. If you're walking up this a flight of steps and you look all the way to the top, you'll trip because you don't see the next step ahead of you. But if you're just looking a couple steps ahead and taking one step at a time, you're looking forward, then your nervous system is going to stay pretty tight or pretty good. You're going to be staying in a good headspace, and you're going to feel like, oh, well, that day went by and that wasn't too overwhelming. But they're just little crisis things that I use when the world is feeling
Tell you what,
feeling.
when it's just feeling all the feels. That's a really good segue into
Yeah.
what I kind of see us talking about today. There's something that's kind of been on my heart since
Mm.
actually I escaped Nashville in the ice storm. I think I was talking to you from where we were staying in an Airbnb. And on the way back, I got a call from somebody who I have known for quite some time. She has been someone who's helped this nonprofit, both from a financial standpoint. She showed up to events and helped just with physical labor. She's a remarkable person. I'm certainly not
Oh,
going to say who she is, but she's truly, truly just one of the caregivers that like I really respect a lot, and I've 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 learned a lot from, and she's really been there for me. I mean, especially right after my mom died, she was just so kind and thoughtful and was always checking in and, just making sure I was okay. And when I received this phone call from her, I haven't heard her not frantic, but seeming really upset so far in her journey. Her mom has been in a place where things have sort of been pretty stable. And I got a call from her, or actually a text from her that was sort of just like cluing me in to what was going on. And I was just sort of taken aback over how quickly things had deteriorated. And then when we had a chance to
mm,
get on the phone and she told me what was happening, it stuck with me because it is something that is such a common problem for caregivers and for families that are going through Alzheimer's and dementia or PICS or FTD, Lewy body, any dementia, really, when families make the decision to move their loved one into a facility. And it really touched on a lot of the common themes that you dealt with your dad, and I thought that you could talk a little bit about that. I'm gonna tell you the
yeah.
story of sort of what happened to her mom, and listeners, I think that anybody who has a loved one with dementia needs to listen up very carefully to this just story, if you will, because if it could happen to her and it happened to me, a different
And me.
story, but yeah, I mean, it happens to a lot of people, and I think it's one of the things, Nikki and I are always gonna be really honest with you guys about stuff, and we're gonna tell you the truth no matter what, and
Always.
unfortunately, one of the hard truths is that when you start dealing with these care facilities, it can be great, it can go great, it can be a wonderful experience. That is sadly not the norm, and it can be really bad, and so I'm gonna kinda give you guys a clue as to what my friend was dealing with. And then I think, it would be a good segue to kind of move in and talk a little bit with what happened to your dad because you guys had to move
Mhm.
him. I can sort
Yeah.
of shed a little bit on my mom here and there. Hers was such a story. It would probably take 3 podcasts to get all the way through it. But I'll put in little nuggets here and there, if I see the time or, just not an opportunity to do so, or if I feel like it could add value in any way. But I really don't want this episode to be much about me at all. And I really want us to focus on the downsides of managed care and what can happen if you're not looking and when you really don't have your hand like firmly on, I don't know what to say here, but like, you know what I'm
No,
trying to
here's
say?
what
Like,
you know what it
if
is?
you're not really, if you don't have a grasp on it, it can
Well,
get out in front of you real quick.
a lot of people, I think, and I think my mom was one of these people, right? She was it was she had been caregiving for my dad. It was COVID, lockdown, not lockdown where she was in South Georgia, but it
Yeah,
was
wide open.
2020, it was wide open. COVID didn't exist.
Wide
But
open spaces.
yes.
Hey.
But my mother was really in her own living hell with my dad. And he had kind of clocked into this space where he was not sleeping. And I couldn't get to them because I had a little one that was very compromised, just coming off of 3 heart surgeries. So it wasn't like I could go to Georgia because people there weren't taking COVID as seriously. I could not go and expose myself, expose my kid to that, and camp out in South Georgia and help her take care of my dad, which is what I wanted to do so desperately. And what ended up happening is for FTD, sometimes they just don't sleep. They will not sleep. And my dad did
Right.
not sleep for 10 days straight, which meant that my mom did not sleep for 10 days straight. So she waved the right flag. I have to put him somewhere. So what often happens is it's like you get the person in the facility and then you're like, oh, I can relax now.
And then you create
I'm
new
relieved of
problems.
duty. I'm relieved of duty. And then what happened in our situation is my mom would only go visit like every couple of weeks. And so the eyes weren't on him. And I think a lot of people assuming that the care is going to be excellent, assuming that they're paying for the Cadillac of centers like my mom did. It was the most expensive place and supposedly the nicest place. And she assumed that these people were going to even be taking better care of him than her because there were many people and they were supposed to be experts in the field and they were supposed to be all these things. Well, that was not the case. And I think that's what happens to a lot of people is they deliver their loved one and they're like, oh, now you take over. I will come and visit. And then the care begins to go, and then your loved one begins to go downhill very, very quick because what these people at the facilities know is you're not going to be there for 2 weeks. So they're not going to do their jobs for 2 weeks.
It's just, it's like this vicious cycle. And what I always tell people, because this is like probably other than what are the signs, I should be looking for in my loved one that they have dementia or Alzheimer's is how do you know when it's time to put them in a facility? And it's such a hard question to answer. This is like, guys, honestly, in thinking about this, like while we're talking, Nikki and I are going to have to like break this down into probably like 4 different segments.
It's the hardest decision you will make.
We're talking about so many different issues right here, but what often happens is you think that by making this next best decision for your loved one, that it's going to be the right decision for all of you. And sometimes initially it is. But what happens is in relieving yourself of maybe this great burden that has been caregiving, 24/7, you are going to, in essence, if it is not truly the best of care, and that, if you haven't found the world wonder of care, which there's very few out there, I'm starting to think they don't exist. Unfortunately, you're going to create a new set of problems for yourself that you didn't have before. Now, are those less problems than you had before? Maybe. Can they be bigger problems than you had before? Maybe. And I'm going to kind of just explain what happened with my friend. And then I really want you to talk about what happened with your dad. And then we can sort of double down and talk about the issues that like you can try and avoid, sort of pitfalls that you don't have to step into. Again, this falls under the category of like learning from our mistakes. And Nikki's right. This whole idea that you can leave them there for 2 weeks and not check on them is just outrageous. It's just my older brother didn't want me to go visit my mom, but like twice a week. And I was like, you're insane. Like somebody has got to, especially when it reaches that point, someone has got to have eyes on, almost every day because stuff just happens. I would go in and she'd have like rotten food sitting by her bed. 24 hours after I brought it there.
Or if they're in diapers, nobody cleaned
not
them.
getting changed or whatever. So my friend, who I'm definitely not going to call you out on here if you're listening, don't worry. But what happened is she had her mother somewhere and her mom escaped. She left the facility. She wandered out in the middle of the night. Now, obviously, for the facility, that is a huge liability for them. So immediately what they become worried about is, okay, could this happen again? And then you could sue us. So ultimately, they double down very hard on mandating that you have 24/7 caregivers with them. If you have a loved one, and this is something too that most people don't understand. If you're in independent living, which is often where, the first level of entry is, there's independent living, there's assisted living, and then there's memory care. And that's called the continuum of care, guys. And most people enter, especially if they're coming in with their spouse, they'll move into something called independent living. And that means for the most part, you are independent. They don't help you with medication. They will come upstairs and let you know when meals are being served, but it's not their job to watch out for you 24/7. And certainly isn't their job to make sure that, you're bathing and going to the bathroom. Now, sometimes some facilities will have packages that you can purchase that will allow you to, have certain things added on, like medication management, or, they will prompt them to take a shower. Now, that's different than mandating them take a shower. They can't do that on any level. So they can offer the shower, but if the person is refusing it, they don't force it. Same thing with food and eating. On assisted living, and I'm jumping very quickly through all of this, but we should get somebody on here to like really give us the nitty gritty on the different levels of care. But assisted living means there is a nurse, that like a registered nurse that sits on the floor. Does not mean that they are with you 24/7, however. So you will have a nurse on the floor. You will obviously have more eyes on you throughout the day. They will check in more periodically, but it is not the same as having a person with your loved one all the time.
Well, because that
Meaning,
nurse is also watching
yeah,
many
they're watching
people.
25 people, right? So, or maybe even more than that. So that is a huge misconception. Oh, I'm going to put my person in assisted living because I don't want to do memory care. I don't like the idea of them being in a locked ward, right? And a lot of people want to do that. Unfortunately, even in memory care, once you move down up to that level, you still oftentimes have to hire full-time caregivers to still be with your loved one because they're either anxious or upset, or they have, tendencies to, stand at the door and like pull on the knob or whatever it is, that you have to have
Mhm.
somebody completely, dedicated just to your loved one. That's not always the case, but it's sometimes the case. And when you start talking about paying, $7,000 or $8,000 a month for memory care, and then, oh, by the way, on top of that, a caregiver, you are talking some serious coins. So most of the time, somebody's in assisted living, they escape, they leave, and the facility gets upset and says, okay, well, now you either have to move them to memory care or you have to pay for 24/7 caregivers, right? And this is where my friend found herself. So she couldn't afford, to pay for 24/7 caregivers for however many years that they might have left in this. So she scrambled and had to start spending the night at the facility with her mother. It was exhausting. She didn't have any idea what it was like to be with her mom at that level anymore. She would go in and see her most days of the week, but we're talking for like an hour or two. That's very, very different than when you are spending 24 hours a day with that person and they're,
Mhm.
standing right behind you, or they're asking you the same question 50 million times a minute, it's a completely different experience. And I think a lot of people aren't ready for that. And so what do I always say when it comes to preparing for Alzheimer's and dementia? You should always be 3 steps ahead and have your plan in place for what's going to happen if, so that you're not caught with your pants down and you're not having to spend multiple nights in a facility like that, or not knowing what to do when your caregiver quits, in the middle of the week and you've got, your kid's wedding coming up or whatever. So she was faced with wanting to move her mom or having to move her mom to memory care. She didn't want to do it. But what happened was this facility started saying, well, because we have a memory care facility here, therefore you have to use ours. And if you don't, and you don't give us 90 days notice, we're still going to charge you for 3 months. Well, do you think she had any faith in that facility after they let her mom elope? No. So she wanted to move her. And now here she is having to hire an attorney and fight and sue this place to get her money back, for 2 months. I mean, it's like $15,000, right? Because she wanted her mom in a better memory care somewhere else. And so, number one, there is no law anywhere that says that you have to move your loved one into the continuum of care where they currently are. That is your choice. You can take them and move them anywhere you want. And I don't care what state that is. There's no law that mandates that. And you always have to consult with an attorney and make sure you know your rights when these facilities start bossing you around and trying to tell you what to do. The
Correct.
second part of this story that's really sad is that unfortunately her mother did not adjust well to memory care. And she did start crying every day. And every time, my friend has tried to take her out, and do the things that she still used to love to do with her. Now her mom starts crying every time she drops her back off. She gets really upset. The facility's upset because she's upset. They obviously don't like that, so they're now encouraging her not to take her out of the facility. Does this sound at all familiar? It's exactly what happened to me. And so she's left saying, but wait a second, am I just never supposed to take my loved one out again? Am I never supposed to take her out to lunch again? All these things. So everyone goes through an adjustment when they move, regardless of if it's independent to assisted, assisted to memory care, whatever. And there's always a downslide, right? Even if you're just moving from one apartment to the next door and they look exactly the same. I don't care. It's so weird. But if you have Alzheimer's, even a move as simple as that will trigger a downturn. And so it's what makes all of this just so deeply complicated and so hard. And what's so awful is that people think, oh my gosh, I just need them out of my house. I can't do this anymore. I'm exhausted. But you get into this whole other sector of management, of care management, that unfortunately you're not always in control of anymore necessarily. And people need to be warned about this and sort of know up front how to approach these issues. You start arguing with the nurses, you start arguing with the management, you start arguing with the, who owns the facility, whatever it is, or the doctors that are in control of the medicines that the facility directors are recommending. Now, all of a sudden, you go visit your loved one and they're slurring and sitting there a shell of themselves, but that's how the facility wanted them to be, so they're not an issue anymore.
Mhm.
It's a big problem. And I think nobody talks about this stuff. I mean, I haven't heard anybody on a podcast talking about the realities of all of this.
Nobody talks about it because they don't, a lot of the time, they don't want to admit that they made a mistake, which is not a mistake. That's what I tell people. It's not a mistake. You needed a reprieve. Like my mother was drowning. She
Mhm.
could not, she had not slept for 10 days. She couldn't do it anymore. She couldn't, you know, um, and if I could have gotten there and I could have been safely there, then I would have taken over and I would have stepped in and I would have been able to help to give her that break. We were just in that time in COVID where I just was like, I had to
You can't.
choose between my father and my son, and I chose my son. And it was horrible, horrible, horrible. But I think every person who is faced with this decision, it is one of the hardest decisions that they will ever make on this journey, is deciding when. And listen, I have talked to a couple of people, especially out here in California, who have had incredible experiences. I'm sure they are paying more than what people, 3 times as much as what people are paying rent for an apartment, to have their family members in these incredible spaces. I don't know what the other spaces are like, but I know your experience. I know my experience. I know your friend's experience. I know other friends' experiences. And unfortunately, the more common experience that I hear about is the one where you drop your loved one off expecting them to be taking care of them, and then you find out that they're not doing their job. And if you're not showing up often, and also don't tell them when you're coming. Don't
Mhm.
ever tell them when you're coming. Don't let it be a pattern. Sometimes show up in the morning before work. Sometimes show up after work. Sometimes show up at your lunch break if you can, if they're in the same city. Don't ever let it be the same time, because if it is the same time, they're going to get that person ready and they're going to get them ready for you to go in and see them. There's nothing to see here, because in the facility where my dad was at, when I finally could get to my dad, and they had given the vaccine to all the people in this facility, so they were finally able to open it up. Before that, it was on lockdown. Nobody could get in, nobody was getting out. So they finally got all the people inside and the staff vaccinated. I was able to get vaccinated working at Children's, and we were able to get that as a family, and we went to Georgia. And we went in an RV. We drove across country so that we weren't in hotels and we didn't expose my dad. Even though he had the vaccine or anyone, we wore masks everywhere we went. We were so careful. And I finally got to him, and my dad was riddled with infection. I went to hug him, and his body was fire. I
Mm.
pulled back and I was like, wait, you have a horrible fever. Horrible. I looked up and I was like, I need a thermometer now. Now. And the woman just quickly ran inside to get the thermometer. He had a fever of 104.3.
Oh my
And I was
gosh.
like, something's going on. Something's going on. I start checking his body. I start asking the questions. When's the last time you did a body check? When's the last time you put him in the shower? He smells. I start asking all these questions. Finally, I get down to his feet and I notice that his it was specifically one of his legs is bright red. So I take his sock off, and then I'm like, whoa, the smell that came off, I was like, that's infection. I need gloves. Bring me gloves. So now they're having to bring me gloves. And now I'm inspecting him, not the nurse on site. I'm inspecting my dad. Luckily, I know how to do this because of Bennett. So I'm pulling his socks off, and his toe is completely infected, pus coming out everywhere. I'm like, how is he not septic? So I look up at the people. I was like, I need the manager. I need the manager now. So all of these things, they're supposed to be bringing in a podiatrist to check on them a couple times a week. They're supposed to be bringing in nurses to check on them, to do all of this. None of it was done. That infection, when I literally took him immediately to the podiatrist, had to remove the toe, had to get injections, had to go on antibiotics, had to do all the things. And the doctor was like, oh, this has been here for a while, which means not only had they not checked him, had a podiatrist not come by, which you're paying for, by the way.
Right.
Supposedly, you're paying them. They're just not paying the other person to come over and do their job, but they're pocketing your money. And so then that also means that not one person had taken his clothes off to get him in the shower for weeks.
I was just about to ask that.
So the pooping and the peeing and all over himself and all the things, and here he was, the Cadillac of places. I let that manager have it.
She's not working there anymore.
It's a he, and he is actually not working there anymore.
Yes.
Correct. He is not. Because even after we moved my dad, I was like, I will not. Like, I don't know who you bring in next. I mean, my mom and I went to the top. And we were like, we don't know who you bring in next, but let me tell you something. Eyes on you. Like, this is abuse. This is negligence. And they can't speak. My dad was a mute. He was so in his disease. He had gone mute. He couldn't talk. He can't tell us what's going on with him, right? So cut to, days later, and I'm showing up every day while I'm in Georgia. I am showing up every day, and every single day I am showing up at different times. Couple of days in, the manager, pulls me aside and, hey, I just trying to get a sense of when you think you'll be by tomorrow, like I just want to get a sense so we're ready for you. And I said, oh, no, we're not going to do that. I'm going to show up whenever I want, and it's going to be a surprise. You're never going to know when I'm going to come by. Do you understand? And he was like, I think I understand. I was like, great.
Yes, Captain Psycho. I do. Thank you so much.
There's something that happens. I am like, and it's love. Like people have this,
nailed it.
It's love. Because here, and I'm seeing this go around even now. Like, guys, we have to choose love, and we have to choose peace, and rage is love.
Sometimes.
It is love. Because when you are talking about somebody that you love and negligent behavior that is happening to that person that you love, when you are talking about injustices that are happening to humanity, when you are talking about these things, and what comes out of you is anger and just absolute horror, that's love. That is love.
And it's also justified.
It's justified. And it is the sanest response to an insane situation. I'm going to put you on notice. I'm not going to play nice. I have seen what you have done. And my mom just couldn't. She was just at that place where she was like, I can't, Nikki. I can't. And I understand. I get it. So like, I know, I see it, you guys. So like when you get your loved one in there and you're like, I just need to, great. Ask a friend to stop by. Ask a sister to stop by. Ask a brother to stop by. Ask an uncle to stop by. Ask an aunt to stop by. Ask if you just can't do it that day. Ask somebody you love. If somebody were to ask me, even if it was an actual stranger, I would be like, you bet.
Sure.
I will absolutely go and check in on your mom and dad. Where are they? What's the address? Like, ask for people to go if you just can't do it, because I also understand that. But you do need to know what happens inside of these places when you drop your loved one off, because, man, some of them, that was a horror story. And by the way, it did not end. We had to end up moving my dad. And we finally, they one day, I was in Los Angeles. I got a panicked call from my mom. They made up this lie about my dad, like all of a sudden getting really aggressive. My dad had not been aggressive, not once inside this disease. And I immediately said, and they were sending him to the ER. And I immediately said to my mother, he's been battling kidney stones.
Mm-hmm. I
I
was just going to say, or
guarantee you,
UTI.
or a UTI, which he had both. Got to the hospital. He had copious amounts of kidney stones in him and a UTI, was running a fever, was sick as a dog. And how long had he been in there, sick as can be? And instead, their excuse that was to lie and say that he had been aggressive. No, if anything, he was probably just trying to tell you that he was in pain because he can't speak. So that's the other thing. A lot of these people are not even trained in how to deal specifically with Alzheimer's and dementia patients. So this is what you're up against. And we eventually did, after that ER visit, we realized that we had to move my dad. And it took us a while to find a good place. But here's what I will say. So the place that we ended up taking my dad was a recommendation from another wife of a loved one who had Lewy body. Lewy body, frontal temporal dementias, you will have a harder time with them because they're not just going to be normal, typical Alzheimer's patients, especially Lewy body.
They're like on a bad acid trip. Everything they're seeing is like a hallucination in its most terrifying form, by the way.
It is. It's the most awful kind. And so this family had been in and out of like 7, 8 different facilities. So we were like, hey, what was the last place that your husband was in? Because that was the only place that like worked for him. Luckily, we were able to get in touch with that place in Jacksonville, Florida, which was an hour and 15-minute drive from the farm, which sucked. However, never judge a book by its cover. We were in the Cadillac of places, paying $5,000 to $6,000 a month. Terrible, terrible, horrible place. This place was a mobile home on the side of the road. I'm not exaggerating. My mother pulled up to it and was like, no, I can't do this. He's not coming here. He's not coming. And we were like, listen, they said it was great. They said it was amazing. The care was amazing. Don't judge a book by its cover. Go in. Let's meet the people. Let's see. This place, this mobile home on the side of a road where they didn't even have, they had nothing. It was bare bones. Had the greatest care. So for the last, 4 to 5 months of my dad's life, he got to be in this place with 2 powerhouse nurses, very educated in Alzheimer's and dementia. And the woman who started this was very telling. She started these. She has 3 of them in Jacksonville. She started it because she lost her mother to FTD.
There it is.
Frontal temporal dementia. And she had such a hell of a time, a nightmare finding a place for her mother, that when her mother passed, she was like, I have to do this because I need to help for this exists for other families. And they took such incredible care of him and loved him so much and were so communicative and were amazing. And he was there until the very end. So that's the other thing I will say is don't judge a book by its cover. Meet the owner. If they're sitting behind a desk and they're like a little, what's the Pleasantville? And everything is great here at, Crazy Town,
Shady
USA,
Pines.
Shady Pines, USA. Yes, and we like to take them out and we like to do this and blah, 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 blah. I would be like, what are your credentials? What big business is paying for this? Who
Mhm.
supports this place? How much are you charging? What kind of experience do your nurses have in Alzheimer's and dementia care? What about FTD care? What about Lewy body care? What kind of experience do they have? You can ask every question you need to ask under the sun. You can go and stay there all day if you need to.
Mhm. That's what I was going to suggest. Stay there all day, like really truly watch how engaged the nurses and the staff are with the
Yes.
actual like residents. And then also a great question to ask is what's the turnover rate there like for the staff? That is a
Yes.
huge guys. Red flags all day long. If they can't keep nurses on staff for more than 3, 6 months and they're gone, there's your answer. It's not a
Yeah.
healthy environment to work in. And that's either because the management's not great or their coworkers aren't great or, there's too much, they're overworked. That's a big
Hmm.
one. Ask what the staff ratio is to patients in the facility. That's tremendously important. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Keep going.
No, that's a great note. Look at reviews online. Like, do your due diligence. And then
Yeah,
even after you do that, go check in on that loved one.
every
You
day.
go check in.
Well,
Yep.
that's
Either
aggressive.
you or either you or someone you love, check in as much as you can.
Yeah,
And
let's not
I would
mandate it
say,
like every day. Like
or
some
every
people
other
can't
day.
do that, but every third, I would say at the latest. I mean, one of the worst things that happened to me was same as what you were saying. The facility was like, you need to be on a schedule because every time, your mother sees you, she gets upset after. Well, no kidding. She didn't want to go to one of these places in the first place. We put her in it way too early. That was not my choice. I had no autonomy in making that decision, unfortunately. That was just mandated for me, and I knew it wasn't right. I wish now that I had spoken up further about it, but you know what
Hmm.
they say about 2020 hindsight? It's about as useless as a tampon after menopause, so we're just not going to go there. But pretty sure that's not what anybody says, by the way, other than me, but whatever. Um, the point is, I didn't want that. I knew that it was too soon. And I think that's another thing you really got to think about is who are you doing this for? Is it for their safety or is it for your convenience? Because yeah, there is a stage where it gets really freaking hard and it is inconvenient, but are you necessarily changing their diapers and like having to pick them up out of the bed and like haul them everywhere? No, maybe they're just aggressive. Maybe they're argumentative. My mom was putting up the biggest fight about accepting care into her home. And that's when, my family was just like, well, nope, if you're not going to accept caregivers, then this is where you're going. And I was like, hang on, there's a middle ground here. Maybe we take her to a facility, show her around and say, this is what is in your future, if you can accept a little bit of help and care. Also, maybe you don't just introduce a caregiver and then leave. Maybe you
Hmm.
stay with the caregiver, which is not something my mom was given the opportunity to do. These people were just hired, showed up, and of course, she was like, get out of my house. I don't want you here. But, she just needed time to adjust. And if you put
Hmm.
somebody who's like relatively independent still and very much still with it, with Alzheimer's, particularly if they are fighting the fact that they even have the disease or they think they're in a lesser phase of it than they already are, and you drop them in a nursing home and they're very much still aware, what do you think's going to happen? Of
They're going to be
course they're going to
sad.
resist and they're going to be sad. But sadly, what ends up happening, and this happened to my mother. I mean, guys, again, I say this so much, like learn from my mistakes. I never saw my mother again after the day I walked her into that facility. She was never the same. They just started medicating her to be able to stay there. And it was awful to watch it all unfold. I mean, when I tell you gut wrenching, however hard it would have been to have had her living with me or dealing with caregivers and her in an apartment, however time consuming that might have been for however long that lasted, it would have done a lot less damage to me personally, emotionally, mentally, really even physically than having to witness somebody that I loved so much deteriorate so quickly because she was just in sheer desperation. I mean, literally, my mom was begging me with everything she had, please don't leave me here. Please don't do this. I will lose what's left of my mind. I am begging you. And my hands were completely tied. I was up against a threat of if you do anything to mess with this, you'll just lose her completely. And it was the worst. It was the absolute worst. And it was all so preventable, is the thing. And I think that so many people make these decisions. They either feel backed into a corner because, particularly with FTD or Lewy body, an
Mm-hmm.
illness even can bring about a serious, serious bout of hallucinating. And what ends up happening is an ambulance gets called, they wind up at a hospital, and then all of a sudden they're in crisis. And that's what I keep saying. Don't wait until you're in a point of crisis to have a backup plan for how you're going to handle it.
To
I have
start
another friend
thinking
that
about
this just
these
happened to,
things.
that like last week in the ice storm. Their loved one wound up at Vanderbilt. A social worker got involved, but kind of made the first wrong steps. And the next thing you know, the hospital was like, okay, well, your medicines are better and you seem better and we're going to release you. And it was because, my friend had called me that I was like, no, they need to go somewhere for at least a week, make sure they get stabilized, then they can come home maybe, as long as they're not a threat to themselves or, your parents or whatever, or your mom. But the point is that bad decisions get made when people are in crisis and when they are not sure what else to do. And yes, sometimes these facilities can be a godsend and they can be a lifesaver when you've really burnt out and you're feeling exhausted and you can't go on, or if you're alone and there's nobody else to help you or to step in. But just know and understand you're not always going to stay in the same facility, number one. You might end up having to move to another one. That creates problems. These moves are very expensive. A lot of these facilities will not allow just normal run-of-the-mill movers to come in. You have to wind up purchasing a mover that they have provided that is, is licensed in senior living. And those are probably 3 times what, 3 men in a truck are. And so you're buying additional things that you can't even imagine. And the care that adds up on top of it. I mean, just the fact of adding somebody to go in and give my mom her medicine. I mean, that was like another extra $2,000 a month or whatever it was added on. That's probably not right, but I will just say there's always hidden fees. You don't ever really know quite what you're signing up for when you move them in, and it's always changing. It's a fluid system. 1 minute they're okay, but when they decline, they're going to need something else, and then that's going to probably cost more. So again, you need to know what you're getting into. And you need to
Yes.
understand that just because this is going to alleviate some problems for you and your family, it's going to cause others most of the time, even in a
Yeah.
perfect world. But there are strategies that you can put in place to help alleviate at least some of those problems. And what you said is just
Yes.
amazing. That is, if you can't go and you're out of town for a week on vacation, have your best friend stop in. Just check in and be like, how are they doing? How are you today, Mrs. Brown? Get a sense of like how they're doing. Have they been changed? Are they eating? Are they getting out of their room? Because like you said, when your eyes aren't on, bad things happen. And that's
Yeah.
just the facts, because it's a
Yeah.
very deeply underserved area of expertise in our country, especially. And these facilities are totally understaffed. You're dealing with people who have not been trained. I mean, 2 of my mom's caregivers worked at Burger King during the day. I mean, like,
And
these are
I'll,
not people
yes.
that are highly skilled in Alzheimer's and dementia.
Yes, I will also say that the well of people that there were that you could even choose from because of what's been happening with ICE in this country, we have lost a lot of people that are working in the caregiving world who were that
Hmm.
was their full-time job was
Yep.
caregiving, and you could and it was being hired to either work in some of these places or to be a person that would come to that person's home
Hmm.
and be with them all day or do overnights. And so the pool of people now, it's really shrunk to what it's tiny. So it's hard. It is hard. It's harder, much harder to find. And I know this all sounds bad. Like, well, what are we supposed to do? Here's one thing I will say. Yeah, it is. It's really hard, you guys, but that's why we're telling you the truth about all of this, because a couple of things. Number one, every situation is different. I always say, like, No Alzheimer's patient is the same. No dementia patient is the same. No FTD, no PICS, no, like, there is no across the board. Timing might be different. Symptoms might be different. Reactions to things might be different. My dad did not cry. He did not, by the time he was moved over, he did not have that reaction. Yeah, we were really lucky in that he walked in and that was that. And so, like, we didn't have that other families often have to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
And, also my mother was retired. She was able to be home with him for a really long time and take great care of him up until she couldn't. We were very fortunate. We were able to, my mother was able to solidify certain financial situations so that it could help pay for that, right? But what you said about staying 3 steps ahead once you receive a diagnosis, I think that is such good advice, because what I see with a lot of people too, and not as much anymore because we're talking about it, people are talking about it, but especially even 3 years ago, nobody would begin to make decisions about anything. And I would say,
Mm-hmm.
hey, you need to start thinking about these things because there will be a moment. Do you want to bring in a caregiver to the house? How many days? Do you want to look at a facility? Who do you want? Like, these conversations, unless you're planning on quitting your job and becoming a full-time caregiver,
Mm-hmm.
something or moving that person into your house, but even then you have to go to work, so you need to start thinking about hiring people and what that's going to look like and how much that's going to cost and potentially how you're going to cover that, how it's going to get paid for. Like, these are all, the second that diagnosis comes and you have a moment to emotionally deal with that, then you have to begin to make decisions and I always say, plan A, plan B, plan C. This would be the ideal thing. Plan B, this is a backup, and plan C if both of those fail.
And you know what you're
You know
forgetting?
what?
You're forgetting Plan S. Do you know what Plan S is?
You and me and the cinder blocks?
No. That's plan. I don't know what plan that is. We'll have to come up with a name for that. That's just plan Cinderblock. No, Plan S is when the shit hits the fan. It's the shit hits the fan plan. And that's probably your most important. And that includes you. That means, like, when you fall apart and when you can't put yourself back together again and you're still the one holding the bag, you need a backup plan for yourself. Like, fortunately for me, I had my husband here, like, when things got really bad with my mom at one point, and we're not going to go into all that, but I got very sideways with her facility and my own family, and things got a little hairy for a hot minute. My husband was the one who stepped up, and my mom's facility literally banned me for a period of time. They told me I was bad for her, that I was making her the way that she was, and that I was being,
because you were holding them accountable.
I was put in timeout of visiting, that same thing. They wanted me to come at a certain time, only like twice a week. And that way my mom could, quote unquote, get excited to see me and get, pumped up about getting dressed. And that was somehow going to bring her around out of her depression or whatever. I mean, the woman couldn't remember anything by that point, had trouble walking, but sure. Okay. She was going to put on her pearls and get pumped, for her daughter visiting. Excited. But regardless, I could not go legally for a period of time. I mean, I'm sure I could have, but I probably would have been escorted out. But my sweet husband went, and my 5 best friends here, each of them took turns, some of them with their babies, bringing her muffins, bringing her coffee. And that pissed them off to see that. But, like, I didn't care. At least, they were there doing it. And do you know what they all said? She looks so sad. She's gotten so much worse. It's really sad. And I will add, when they finally let me back in, when they realized after, 2 weeks of her continuing to just get worse and worse, and that I had nothing to do with the fact that she was getting worse.
That she was
the
dying.
Caregiver, well, she wasn't dying at that point. It was still a couple months out. But the caregiver that saw me walk back in for the first time with my family, I couldn't even bring myself to come alone. I was so scared and, like, traumatized by the way these people had talked to me that they all came with me. Not only did the head of the facility, like, offer my kids ice cream and like cover us in kindness. But the caregivers who were with my mom, when they saw me hug her, 2 of them started crying because their hearts were so broken for what had happened to both of us. I mean, what does that tell you? You know, like horrific. The last thing in the whole world I could imagine when I started a freaking nonprofit for caregivers is that something like that could happen to me. And if it could happen to me and I'm educated, right? Like my social determinants of health are incredible. I mean, yeah, I had a rocky childhood, but nothing compared to so many people out there and what they're facing. And my God, you know, if you're coming at this without a good education and maybe you're already impoverished and you have food, you know, insecurity and you have no money and your parent is in a state-run facility because that's all you can afford or you can't afford anything and that's just where they are, or a state hospital worse. I mean, my heart
Yeah.
just breaks. I mean, it was bad what
Same.
happened to my mom and it was bad what happened to your dad, but that's nothing compared to what it
Nothing.
can be and what it
Nothing.
is for so many people. And I wanted to touch on that, not because, you know, I'm trying to like kumbaya this or anything, but the truth is really, and if you're listening, freaking donate to us because Lord knows there are so many caregivers out there that are just, they're not making it. They don't have the money to fight this disease, much less their own mental health while they're doing it. And it's just so freaking hard, man. And like, if you're doing this and you do have an extra few bucks, please just, it's like a desperate plea at this point. Give it to us. Let us hand it out to people who really need it. Because like I said, it was hard for Nikki and it was hard for myself and my family. But I mean, we were the lucky ones. We were
Lucky.
the lucky ones. It's really,
Mm-hmm.
really tough. And, you know, even my friend that called me last week, whose, you know, parent had FTD, they said, I can't believe this happened to us even in the hospitals. It's all about who you know, where you can get them in, who you know can get them in. And it's like a game of like Monopoly, you know, or like, you know, it's strategic almost. And I'm like,
And
yeah. And
also,
you're like educated and know the system.
well, and that was the other thing I was going to say, because I know a lot of people are listening to us and they're like, you know, well, how do I know what to say, what to ask, what to do, that's why we're talking about this, is because you might not be in a situation that my mom was in where she had taken out 20 years ago a specific life insurance policy on my dad that actually, by the way, you can no longer get. She just happened to like go, you know what? I'm going to get one of those for both of us. I'm going to go
So
ahead and do
smart.
that. So smart. Or else she wouldn't have been able to handle that financially. She just happened to do it 20 years prior and it accumulated, right? And so if we didn't have that, right? And the other thing I would say is it's not like when I got into all of this, when my world changed 8 years ago and I got the diagnosis with my dad and my kid in that same week, I didn't even know there was a children's hospital in our backyard in Los Angeles. I didn't even know what, Pick's disease was. But just because we don't know doesn't mean that we can't find out. You have to be willing to reach out, do the research, find somebody
Learn.
to talk to, learn. Don't just also depend on the doctors going into a hospital or going into a nursing care situation and thinking that they'll know how to do it or what to do. You, like I told you on the episode that you're going to listen to about Bennett, I mean, surrounded by all the best doctors, gave birth at a great adult hospital. And yet I basically had to threaten to sue them or burn that building down to the ground because of the violations that they were committing against what I had asked for my birth plan, for my baby. And they were just wanting to just roll right past it and do whatever they want to do. And I was like, over my dead body. You have power, especially if you're paying, especially because at the end of the day, if they are negligent, you can take them for everything they have. Keep records. write it down, take pictures. When I got there and I saw my dad in that position, I took pictures of his feet. I wrote down what his temperature was. I actually took a video of me taking his temperature and what that temperature was. I started writing down and taking pictures and video of everything that day. And from then on out, as long as I was coming around, that man was in ship shape. The problem was the second I got in that RV and had to drive all the way back to California because nobody was coming every day like I was and doing what I was. So it just reversed right back to, them not paying attention and being negligent. But my point is you get to stay on top of them. You get to ask for what you need, and you get to ask whatever questions you want to ask. And I know that sounds really scary to people because they're like, oh my God, I don't really speak up like that. Here's what I'm going to say. Just because you never have doesn't mean that you can't. You need to find it. You need to find that strength inside of you. Hey, if you're a woman, you got a vagina, dude. You can birth babies out of that thing. Do you know how strong you are? Do you know how strong you are? Women are the most powerful beings. We have been through so much crap since the beginning of time, and yet we still get up. We love our children. We take care of our community. We take care of people. We do our job. We are so strong. Find your strength and your voice. Don't be a victim. Do the research. Learn, reach out, DM a stranger who knows something about this on Instagram. 9 times out of 10, they will be like you and me. That's how you got in touch with me. Hey, my name is Liz. Want to chat? Yeah, I do. Like most of the time, no matter who that person is, they will get back to you because they want to help.
Guaranteed. If the person has cared for a loved one with Alzheimer's, they are not going to say no. No way. No how. And if they do, you know what? Move on to the next person because chances of 2 people saying no is slim to none because everyone who's been through this wants to help another who's been through this. Just bottom line. It's the truth. And I will also add, just circling back to the very beginning of this, getting mad and getting aggressive with people at these facilities or doctors or nurses or caregivers or whatever it is, it's not always bad. It's love. If you didn't get angry and you didn't stand up for the person that you care about, what are you doing? What are you doing? And I say that with so much intention. And so I have all the goodness behind that. I don't mean go be a crazy person. I don't mean dredge everybody through the mud and just go scorched earth.
You don't have to throw a painting off the wall.
No, and you don't have to throw a temper tantrum and demand people's jobs or sue or any of those things. But sometimes you do have to get a little bit passionate. If you're talking about the livelihood of somebody that you love, we always said, back in the beginning when we first started season 2 together, who's in the watchtower for yourself? Nobody but you, right? It's you. And when you are dealing with somebody who does not have their mind anymore, you are that person's watchtower. So damn it, do a good job. And who cares what people think about you? Who cares? If you think I gave 2 shits about what some, half-ass Rolodex neurologist thought about me by the end of my mom's life, no, ma'am, I did not. Just like you didn't care what the doctor thought about you regarding Bennett and his heart. Listen, guys, at the end of all of it, you always, and like what you said, Nikki, just because you don't necessarily know the right questions to ask or you don't know the right things to say, give yourself some grace because when it really boils down to the most important moments, you just intrinsically will, you will know what to do. It's like almost intuition, and particularly when you get to those later stages and the people are so helpless on their own, just this level of love comes over you and protection, almost like it would for a small child. And you just kind of intrinsically know what to do next, even when others around you don't. And I think that that's what's so beautiful about this disease in general, or all these neurological diseases, is that it does, with the loss of communication verbally and even physically, in some cases where they don't recognize you anymore. A new way of communicating and caring and showing love takes over. And it is such a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful gift, honestly, that, people that don't go through this don't get to experience. Not that I would not give it all away to not have had to go through it, because it wasn't fun, but it did change me. And I tell people that all the time, that if you really open your heart, even in these terrible moments where you don't know what your head from your ass of what you're doing, or if you're making the right decision, and you trust yourself and you just do the best that you can, it's all going to be okay. And I promise, for anybody who's listening and you feel like you're just, you're destroyed in the moment. I know my friend, I know how she's feeling every time she drops her mother off and she's watching her cry at the door. I mean,
Ugh.
God, if I don't know exactly what that feels like. I would get in my car and call you. I would actually have to drive for a minute just weeping to where you could even understand me when I would say hello. But I would just be racked with sobs. It was awful. Or moments where she would yell at me and say, you're not my daughter. How could you do this to me? I would never do this to my mother. I mean, just gut-wrenching moments where you're like, is this real life? This can't be real life. This is so painful. It can't be real, and yet you're walking through it and you're existing in it. And you know that it's not going to get better for a while. And there's something just so freaking hard about that, guys. I'm not minimizing it, because I can put myself back in those shoes of staring at her through the glass when those doors closed and my car is supposed to move away. I don't know, honestly, what I will experience in my life that will be harder than that. I hope nothing. I hope nothing, because it was god awful. And, I had family members that were like, well, it's your own fault. You've done this to yourself. You should just have left her there and left well enough alone. And then you wouldn't be upset. And, she wouldn't even know that she had gone out with you, and it wouldn't matter. And all I can say to that is, I still know to this day that what I did was right. She didn't have long to live. And at least she got to experience time with somebody she knew loved her. And she at least got to still experience being touched by somebody that was familiar, and held by somebody that was familiar, and comforted by somebody that was familiar. So regardless of what these places tell you, even if you've made the choice to put them in, number one, you have the choice to take them back out. Don't think that it's like an all or nothing situation. You can change your mind. You can change your mind. If it doesn't work out and it turns out to be, you feel in whatever way either not the right place or just not the right decision, anything can be undone. Don't feel like you have to be stuck. And, we can talk with another caregiver who's actually done it from their own home until the very end and hear how hard that gets, because that's not any easier. And I truly, I say this, I don't know which is harder sometimes. I've gone back and forth in my brain about this a lot of times, and I don't know which is harder. I think they come with their own pros and cons, each decision. So
True.
you have to do what's right for you. You have to do what's right for your family. You always need to take the best interest of your loved one at heart. But at the end of the day, you do have to protect yourself as a caregiver and do what's right for you. And we respect all decisions. Nikki and I show no judgment either way. When people are like, oh, don't you think it's so bad if I move my loved one in somewhere? And I'm like, no, absolutely not. You can reach a point where that is the only answer for you and for your family. And you know what? It'll be bad, but it would also be bad if they stayed at home. So just give yourself a lot of grace, guys. And, I feel like we touched on so many different issues in this podcast. What would be super helpful, y'all, is if maybe you could send Nikki and I some direct messages if you're listening. We've got a lot of listeners. We're growing. Please continue to spread our podcast for us. And, I hate to say that phrase, like and share, so I'm not going to say it. I don't even know how you like a podcast. That goes to show you how well I know technology. But do share,
Follow. I think you can follow, right? And then share.
On YouTube. On YouTube, you can
follow and share, guys.
Guys, can you please follow, and share? Thank you so much from
Yes, thank
Liz
you so much.
Nikki,
from
Summer's Eve douche.
From Liz, Nikki, and yet again, the
Summer's Eve
sponsor
douche
that we are dying to get. I can't wait till we come on here one day and we go, guys, you will never believe it. Guess who is our sponsor? Oh my God. But I love the way you left it. I do love the way, and we'll wrap it up by saying this.
Oh, my face is getting red. I'm laughing so hard.
We will wrap it up by saying this. No, absolutely no judgment. You have to do it the way that you have to do it. And if that looks like you don't leave your loved one ever, even if people are like, oh, honey, you need to do this and you really need to take a break and but for you, this is what you have decided to do. You do what you have to do. If you were like, I can't do this, I need to put them somewhere, great. Find the best place you can afford and check on them when you can. And if you can't because you emotionally can't get there, you ask friends, ask loved ones, can you please just go and do it today? I don't have it in me today. I guarantee you they will show up for you. I promise you. And if you want to keep them home and hire a caregiver, right? Put cameras up in that house, baby monitors up in that house.
Yeah. Or get
Seriously.
weird. Get that like teddy bear, that nanny cam.
I'm just
really
saying,
freak somebody out.
Bring, like, I am so honest. I will be with people who used to come in and help caregive for my kids. You know, I'd be like, oh, I just want to be honest. Obviously, we got cameras up inside the house. I often do check in on the kids when I'm away. So just letting you know, I'm watching sometimes. Like, I'm that person because I'm crazy, but I'm not crazy
gosh.
because, by the way, I go away for work. And like, I've heard horror stories of people hiring people and they're great in the interview and they have great recommendations. And then all of a sudden that person is caught on a nanny cam doing something absolutely insane with their child. So like, you can
Or your husband.
Or your husband. Girl, that is a whole other podcast. Let me tell you, there ain't a match big enough. I will set this whole place on fire. But like, I'm just saying, like, you can make whatever choices you need to make in order to get through what you need to get through as a caregiver in the most kind, loving way for yourself, for your family, for your loved one. And if you, hey, any questions, you need us, DM us. And also, it really helps us to know what you guys are really needing from us and what we can talk about and how to help you. And then, like, follow, share.
And Summer's Eve douche. I know I do. I know I douche. Do you? Summer's Eve douche. We'll say it on everyone. They're bound to call us at some point.
They're bound
Nikki.
to call. Why can't we just get the sponsorship?
Oh my God. I'm gonna like have an asthma attack from laughing so hard, like internally and holding it back. Okay,
we love
guys,
you all.
for real. We love you so much. Hey, seriously, I know you're probably getting sick of hearing just from the two of us, but we had such positive feedback from talking about the stuff that you really care about, which is caregiving, and there's so much to talk about regarding it. Don't worry, there are going to be guests back on this podcast.
Yes.
But tell us what you want. Tell us what you want to hear about. If there's a topic that we touched on today and you want to hear more about it and you want us to get an expert on here about it, like, don't be shy. There's not that many of you listening to us. Like, we're not famous. Well, one of us is famous. The other one is completely not famous. So
I mean,
you just holler at Liz. You holler at Liz on the Mind What Matters Instagram page, and I'll do my best. You know, I got Nikki by DMing, so you know my DM fingers work pretty well, and I think that sounds pornographic. So I'm gonna cut myself off there.
Yes, with
Thanks,
douching
guys.
and pornographic fingers. Good night, everyone. Yes. We love you.
Can't ever call us unauthentic, guys. We love you guys. Hang in there. You're doing great work, and just keep doing it. All right. Thanks, guys.